everybody. It's Sophie and Marco here, and we are reviewing the second episode of the fourth season of Better Call Saul. And the episode is called Breathe. It aired yesterday.
Why is that, Sophie? Why is it called Breathe? We're not going to talk about that, okay? We're not going to spoil anything for you.
Okay. It aired yesterday, August 13th at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Well, let's see, there are about 10 parts to it, and mainly they're focusing on Hector Salamanca, who, remember that he had a stroke and he's in the hospital, and I think they're evaluating his condition. And then Jimmy and Kim, and what's going on with them, and then Nacho's father. And then in this episode, I don't think she was in the last episode, Lydia comes into the picture, and Mike, and Gus. So everybody, there's something for everybody in this show. And unlike last week, there's a little more action, and
Yeah, if you think I was criticizing last week, I was just trying to point out that it seemed like the directing style was not as good as it could have been. It felt kind of slow. It felt like a filler episode, honestly. It wasn't a filler episode, I know that, but it felt like it because of how much didn't go on, how the directing, I don't know, it was just not good directing. So.
okay, well, like I said, Hector Salamanca is in the hospital, and I guess it's safe to say he has not spoken. He is awake. He's out of his coma. They are checking to see if he's paralyzed in his legs, and whether or not he is or isn't. He doesn't speak at all. And it looks like, if you think about Breaking Bad, that this is when he loses his voice.
I hope not, too. I think that one thing to talk about with Hector is that Vince Gilligan actually wanted to make Hector the real villain of season 3 of Breaking Bad, meaning he would have spoken in Breaking, or not speak, but he would have been the villain. And in this show, he was kind of the villain in season 2, although Chuck has always been a bigger villain than anybody else on Better Call Saul.
Well, at least they focused more on him.
Well, I mean, Chuck is horrible. He's a terrible person. I mean, he's a lot worse than Hector, in my opinion. I mean, Hector is just like an old-fashioned Spanish drug guy, and
he's a drug dealer.
But I liked how in this show they got him to speak, starting with season 2, where he tries to get Mike to help get Tuco out of prison, and I like how he became this prominent character that spoke. And so I would really be disappointed a little bit just because I liked it when he spoke. He's really good actor, and he does very well with being a villain.
Well, this could be, if we'll see what happens. And there's only 8 episodes, right?
No, there's 10 episodes.
Oh, that's good, because then that means it'll go into October. Okay. Because if they're only going to have 8, I think that would just take us to the end of September. So.
Well, you know, Sherlock only has 8 episodes.
That's horrible.
One of the worst shows ever.
Okay, well, so a man, and I don't know, I don't think it was the doctor. I think it's somebody else. I wasn't clear, but he goes and sees Gus and says that he thinks the doctor there at that hospital is good, even though he's not like from Johns Hopkins, premier health center in the country and with the finest doctors. And Gus replies, I decide what he deserves, no one else.
So he's mad. He's mad this episode because he hates Hector, and he wants to be the one who gets the final revenge.
I guess I didn't understand, really. I didn't get Gus in this
He
show.
he wants Hector all to himself, like like he's just a thing to him that he wants to hurt and maim. He's mad that he got poisoned by Nacho because that takes away his enjoyment of torturing him. Because as you know, in the Breaking Bad show, he spends all of his time torturing him in the nursing home when he's in the wheelchair. So you could actually argue that this is a good thing that he got poisoned, but he just doesn't see it that way yet. And this episode, I felt like, compared to last episode, it was a lot better at moving along. I really liked the camera work compared to last episode. It's not like it's not like it's a bad episode. Last episode, it's just not what I would consider to be Better Call Saul worthy directing. I don't know who directed it. I could look it up and I could tell you more about it and maybe why I think that it was a bad directing job. But this episode was great. I think this was a fantastic episode. It had a lot of stuff to it. It had a lot of acting moments where you understand why this show is so popular, not just because it's attached to Breaking Bad. So now, Safi, do you want to talk about this episode and your
Oh,
little summary that spoils everything?
no, I didn't do that. I just thought
Oh, okay, that's good.
I just thought we would. I don't know what. Well, like I said, I said there's all the people like Jimmy and Kim. They even show a little bit of Howard. Kim, Kim and
You loved
Jimmy were
Kim.
supposed to go see Howard in a meeting. It was for the will to hear the
He's
reading of the
just sick
will.
of it. He's sick of. He knows what was gonna happen. I mean, he knew it was gonna happen.
Well, so he doesn't go,
Yeah,
and
which I don't blame him.
he's actually out looking for work. Remember, he can't work as a
Well,
lawyer, so
is he
he's got.
really?
Well, I don't know what he. That's another
That was
thing I
so
wasn't.
cool.
That was another thing I wasn't clear on what he was doing. It was like it was almost like a rehearsal for. I I don't know. It was weird, like being Jimmy. I mean, being Saul.
Being Saul, yeah.
And but I don't know. I was confused. He told the day he goes. What happens is they wake. She wakes up. She hears this whirring sound, and she goes into Kim goes into the kitchen, and she sees Jimmy. He's all dressed. He's making orange juice, and it's really early. And he says, I'm gonna get an early start. I'm gonna go way down south. He said the name of the place. I don't know. Wasn't familiar with it. And then he goes, and I've got all these places to go, and I'm going to work my way up, meaning I guess to Albuquerque. And so he
And
leaves.
these are only. We should also clarify. These are only temporary jobs. He's
What?
gonna be a
Yeah.
lawyer in
Yeah, he's only
months.
he's when is it?
Uh,
When's he going to be a lawyer?
Well,
He's
it's like a year. It's like a little
Oh,
under
okay.
a year or
so,
so.
remember he's been suspended because of his behavior. but really, for the time that he's suspended, really isn't that much. So, I mean, he could have been taken his. They could have taken his law license away. So, for just being suspended a year, I think that's pretty good. So, anyway, he goes out, and she instead goes to this meeting to hear the. I guess it's the reading of the will, because that's what it was discussed. And who's there is Rebecca, and Rebecca is the girl woman who was Chuck's
Does it matter?
girlfriend or fiance
Yeah, she
or
was his.
wife.
She was. I think she was his fiance, and then of course she chose her career over having a husband. So
Yeah, I
she.
can't even remember, but they broke up.
I mean, they're both the same. They're both very like stubborn, kind of weird people who are just, they're not meant to get married to each other. They're too focused on their stupid careers.
So apparently, I don't think this is such a big spoiler. He left her the house,
Yeah,
which
you left her this
the house is
crappy.
all destroyed. I guess there's a garage that's still intact, and of course the property. So she wanted to build a new house or do something with the property.
I wonder if he was thinking about that when he did what he did in his house. You know what I mean? Like if he was thinking about the fact that she would get the house.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. That's a lot of supposition. But and I'll just say what the rest of it is. But I won't. Well, and apparently.
We'll talk about it in a spoiler alert section, but just in
so
general.
Kim was like there to represent Jimmy, so she heard that, and they did offer. Like I said, there was the garage or some building was not damaged very much, and there was stuff in there. And they said that Jimmy was welcome to come there and look through stuff, and I'm like, oh boy, is that weird? And well, we'll come back to this because
yeah, I know you'll come back to this, Sophie.
Well, this was probably one of the best things that happens in the episode, and it was very enjoyable to watch. And the other thing is a little bit different.
Well, it's enjoyable, especially. I'll talk. Never mind. I'll talk about it in the spoiler section.
And then let's see, what else do we have? Well, like I said, remember I said that Gus was not happy about the doctor who was taking care of Hector, and that was confusing to me because I thought he didn't want Hector around. So, but Marco thinks
no, he wants to torture him.
Yeah, Marco wants.
He wants to have the decision.
He wants to be the one to inflict pain, and he was mad that. And I guess they figured out Nacho did do something.
They saw him through the pills.
Well, I know that. It's just it to me that just is. It was pitch dark outside. There were no lights, and I don't know how they could have seen him throw anything. I mean, they could see him motion with his arm to throw something, but what? I mean, So, but they were right. But anyway, to me, that's just another kind of a long shot. Anyway, so guess what Gus does? Well, remember that the guy, whoever this guy was, said, if it was somebody from like John Hopkins, for example, so he gets a doctor to come in from Johns Hopkins. It's this woman, but she's not only a doctor or a specialist, she speaks fluent Spanish.
I mean, you can kind of tell that she would.
And I thought, I couldn't believe it. It was, and here she is, she's a woman, she's speaking fluent Spanish, and she's really laid back, and you've got those twins, and they're always got this look on their face, the ones who are related to Hector. They're identical twin brothers, and they wear suits, They dress very nicely, and they always have a really hard look on their faces, like they're about ready to slice you up into pieces. And so she said, "Oh, are you Mr. Salamanca's? Are you related to him?" And they stand there, and she said all this in Spanish, and they're like looking at her dumbfounded, and they say what they are, their relationship, and then she proceeds to tell them in a huge explanation in Spanish about his condition, and
And it's funny too because they
I thought that
tell
was funny.
she tells them to the more that they speak to him, the more that he'll uh, have a chance to recover.
Which is ironic because
Which,
it's them and they
yeah,
don't
and they
speak.
never speak at all.
They just give
So
you menacing looks like they're gonna kill you.
that was very funny. It was very
Yeah,
creative.
I thought that was hilarious.
So in general, what do you think? How would you review this episode?
Oh, I'd give it an A.
I give it an A plus.
I really, it was, and it's so funny because it's not, it doesn't really last long. I mean, I watched it when it was live airing, and of course, when it's that like that, they show commercials.
And the
And then
commercials ruin the experience.
Marco watched it without the commercials later, and it's really short, but a lot happened in it, and this scene with there was like three kind of long scenes, and it was the one with Kim at the lawyer's office, well, Howard's office. There was one with the bad scene, the really big thing.
I don't know why you would be talking about that.
And then another thing, Mike, we haven't talked about him yet and what's going. Remember last week, he went to one of the factories because he's been given this title, security consultant. He's getting paid a salary.
But can we go ahead and just give a general little review, so we can get to the spoiler? Because we don't need to be talking about the full. We just want to talk general first before we get to spoilers. So you give it an A, right?
I give it an A because I just thought it was very simple, but it was a lot happened, and it was told very simply, and it was effective. Simple but effective.
Is there anything else you'd have to say about it in general?
Well, there was just a couple of things I wasn't. I guess we got this cleared up with Gus. I didn't understand why he wanted somebody who was from Johns Hopkins, which is a very fine, well-known international hospital for people to go if they've got some kind of terrible illness, like they have their specialist, or they have so many specialists, and who could help somebody. And if only you could afford to go there or even be there, which is, I'm not sure where that is, Maryland, or it's in the east, and I mean, it's a long way from New Mexico. And then I was unsure too about what Jimmy was doing, because there's not the thing what he does. That's a really long. That's a long part.
Not really.
Oh, I think it is.
It was
Jimmy turning into Saul, or a trial run.
Well, it's funny. It's just like last episode, and it's something interesting. His behavior is very off, and it's getting to be very strange, and especially compared to what he usually used to be like. And in this episode, of course, it starts off. The whole episode starts off with him making the orange juice and just very abnormal type of behavior. Just everything he's doing. And she doesn't question it because she thinks that he's grieving. She doesn't want to bother him like that.
But he is, isn't he?
No, he isn't. I don't. That's a debatable thing of whether he cares or not. I personally think that he doesn't give a flying F, and he just wants to get over with it because he hates him. I mean, you remember what he said to him in the season 3 finale.
I know.
I mean, that kind of just cemented him. And so I would give this an I would give this episode an A plus, as I said, but I would also say that this episode is a great episode in terms of it moves right along, and there's no like points where you're just sitting there wondering like why are they still filming. You know, it's kind of a waste. I mean, everything had a purpose. So
Well, okay, I don't understand. There was one other thing I did not understand. And he said, and I guess I just don't remember who, but this was this is something that it's not it started to go happen, but they didn't finish it. It's like it's going to come up later, maybe next episode. I don't know.
there's stuff that's gonna come up. Like they're
Well,
not
this is
just
with the
gonna.
Hummel figure.
Oh, well, I know what's gonna happen with that kind of.
Well, I mean I don't understand what happened before. I just he you know what Hummel, it's a
Well,
Hummel statue.
spoiler alert. We're going into spoilers now. If you haven't seen the episode, go watch the episode because we want to talk about spoilers now. So go ahead. What about the Hummels?
Well, he goes. We haven't talked about this, but like he does go on job interviews, and they just showed one, and it was to work as a copier salesman. So this was a big, long, drawn out kind of scene, and I mean, he really sells himself as being, you know, he did work in the mailroom before he became a lawyer of his brother's law firm. Remember, they showed that. And then, you know, he got his online law degree and he became a lawyer. And then, of course, Chuck wouldn't let him work for the firm, blah, blah. But anyway, he did work in the mailroom. He worked there for several years, and apparently he knew everything there is about copiers, every little thing. I mean, and so this was a place where you sold copiers, and he really, I mean, he knew everything. And then in the office where he was
And
interviewing,
that's very creative. See, that's continuity. When we talked about Andy Griffith, well, I haven't uploaded them yet. But when we talk about Andy Griffith and how it's terrible continuity, it turns you off of the show. This is an example, just a small example of how you can have a great continuity just by a little detail like that.
well, it really helped him in the job interview.
Yeah.
But during the interview, or maybe right before it started, there was a glass case and there was a Hummel figure in it. It was a little boy, and
And he said he knew a woman who had them.
was he talking about one of those women at the nursing home?
Yeah, don't you remember? Now, see, this is from season 1. There was an old woman. I think she was like the head woman, the one that he
Oh
bullied.
yeah, now I
And
remember.
she had the Hummels, and
They
I
had a
mean,
big-
one episode was called Alpine Shepherd Boy.
and it was the Alpine Shepherd boy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. So okay.
yeah.
I had forgotten about that. I should go back and. Yeah, that's right. They had a big thing about the Hummels, and like who had the most Hummels. They had like a competition going on in the place. It was funny.
No,
Yeah.
that's South Park.
Oh, okay.
She
I'm
watched
getting
the South
confused with
Park
South
episode where the old ladies are dealing drugs in the nursing home with their Hummels.
Park. Well, anyway, Hummels are nice, but I'm not into Hummels. Sorry.
Yes, Safi watches South Park. You can believe that. I got her to watch a couple episodes.
So anyway, I didn't get what that was because he does this interview, and I won't say what happens. I guess.
It's spoilers.
Well,
They say they'll consider him.
because,
He
but
leaves.
oh, wait a minute.
and
They
then-
ask him. They look at his application. They say, "Oh, I see you're a lawyer. In fact, you were just a lawyer." why aren't you doing that now? And of course, he doesn't really tell them. He doesn't answer the question.
Well, why would he tell them? That
Oh,
would
I know.
screw everything up.
He quickly, expertly changed the subject, and then they said, well, we'll think
They
about it.
said they'll consider him, and then he leaves, and then he decides that's not good enough, and he goes back,
And he gives them the
and
final,
he gives them a great speech,
real good.
and then after that they're like, okay, just give us 1 minute, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll take you, and then he's like, really?